Hello there, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Last Edit Film Podcast, starring yours truly, Silver Hawkins, and the Great.
Citizen Slave, hello there.
'Tis the season, it's the holiday season now, and in the spirit of said season, we've chosen to take a look at a couple of holiday films. And since I get the honor of choosing first, I chose John Hughes' 1987 film, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, starring Steve Martin and John Candy. The film is about Neil Page, an advertising employee played by Steve Martin, who has to get back home to Thanksgiving, in time for Thanksgiving, to his family, and gets foiled along the way by whatever means of transportation he tries to employ, whether it's planes, trains, or automobiles, or buses, which is an automobile. So, But yeah, and along the way he meets and gets caught up with the most annoying traveling companion ever, in the form played by John Candy, and hijinks ensue from there, basically. And I think there's a lot of classical things about this film in terms of like a holiday movie. You have the whole, like, obviously family is important message and so forth, that really sort of gets brought home at the end, where really the emotional payoff that's been building up throughout the whole movie really sort of pays off really well, I thought. But yeah, it's just a fun film, really. I mean, both Steve Martin and John Candy are great in their respective parts. They're both kind of playing themselves,
Yeah,
to a
Steve
degree.
Martin's kind of the straight man to some extent, but is still
Yeah,
completely zany at times and loses it. And John Candy is just funny. He's just funny in anything he was in my opinion. Uncle Buck as well, and Cool Runnings, all these great films. But in this film in particular, because of the payoff at the end and the pathos that ties everything together, it's a really kind of thoughtful and a nice holiday movie. And we should say we know it's Thanksgiving, but we're European, so we just use it as a Christmas movie, so it's fine.
yeah, and I mean it's just the holidays. The holidays include
Yeah,
Thanksgiving and
absolutely.
Christmas. So
But I think it's brilliant. Even the opening titles, the fact that it comes across with each of the planes, trains, and automobiles, and then we get the non-diegetic sound of each of the vehicle types. On black and white, I just love that.
yeah,
It's so simple but very clear and nicely shot. And then just in the boardroom, he's trying to get away initially. He's sat there going, I've got to go," staring at his plane ticket in this case. And his boss is just sat there idly staring at these great big ads for ages, and they're putting them down and almost speaking, but then not speaking and carrying on. And that's how the film kind of begins. But then we get to the taxi scene, which is the first thing he misses, and everything there goes wrong from that moment.
yeah,
So yeah, he's trying to get down the street. He's trying to get a taxi. He pays this guy $50, and then it's $75 because he says if you can afford that, you can afford more. So straight away he gets screwed over. Misses the tag, runs for the next cab, and there he is, Kevin Bacon, going, "I think you'll find I'm getting this one." A race ensues, and Martin Neal falls over, and Kevin Bacon steals the taxi, which is hilarious.
yeah,
And then it all gets zanier from there.
yeah. Because then he gets to the airport and finds the flight is delayed, and then he gets on the flight, and the flight gets rerouted to Wichita, Kansas,
Yeah.
which is sort of befuddles his wife, for understandable reasons.
Well, yeah, and we should also say that this was a real kind of event that it was based on in John Hughes' life. He had this really terrible 5 days where he was trying to get back home for Christmas or for a holiday and couldn't get there. Everything went wrong, and one of those things that went wrong is exactly as it did in the film, getting on the plane. And it was actually Wichita, the same place, which I thought was great. This kind of semi-autobiographical, crazy day that happened, just exaggerated even
Yeah,
more. So funny. I love the arcs of John Hughes films, especially kind of his middle portion. After 16 Candles, when he hit that kind of Ferris Bueller, and then with Uncle Buck after this, that arc of redemption at the end, people going through horrible times sometimes and then coming out the other side. But it's a very unique film in Hughes's work because it kind of exists on its own a little bit
yeah,
compared to the rest.
yeah. This was the first film he made that wasn't like a youth film, like Breakfast
Mm.
at Tiffany's and so forth.
Breakfast Club.
Breakfast Club. Yeah, sorry, I got those mixed up. Breakfast Club. Yeah. Um, and it really sort of established him as a named director. from what I recall. It got a really positive reception at the time.
Yeah.
Like both the big movie critics at the time, Siskel and Ebert, both loved it. And Ebert even went on to sort of name it as one of his great films afterwards. Yeah, there's a lot to like about the film. Like the characters kind of feel natural. Maybe partially because, to a degree, Steve Martin and John Candy are sort of playing themselves. You know, John Candy's this big, sort of jolly fellow, but he was struggling a lot with self-esteem issues, much like Del is in this film. Like, the most heartbreaking scene in the film is probably not even the one at the end, but in the motel room where Neil finally has enough and just starts hurling abuse in Del's face, and Del just stands there and takes it, and you can see how much it hurts him.
Yeah, absolutely. And the build up through that whole scene is really interesting as well. The fact that they've got this hotel room, they're sharing a double bed. Del is like the worst human being to be around ever if you want to get any peace and quiet. He's first of all, he's reading, and then the lighter comes on, then he's drinking water, he knocks the glass over, and then he just starts making noises.
Yeah, not only that, he also thought he could like shake the beer and not have it spray all over the bed.
all over the bed.
Yeah.
But one of the funniest moments in that scene is Steve Martin taking a shower, and when he gets out, he's on
all
the floor
towels.
Like that, and then this tiny little hand towel, and he's cleaning his whole body with it. Oh man,
yeah,
some great physical.
Because Del used all the towels, and he left his socks and underwear in the sink too.
For when it's got some brilliant moments in the film. There's some very famous scenes. There's a scene where he's he gets dropped off to get a car, and the car isn't there, so he goes back to the rental place, and he goes up to this woman, and there's no swearing in this entire film almost up until this point. Then there's 18 fucks in 3 minutes, something like that. This tirade of abuse comes from Steve Martin's character Neil at this poor rental agency worker or whatever. Yeah. And the funniest part is when she says, "Have you got your receipt?" I
threw it away. What am I gonna do then? Yeah.
Well, you're fucked. That whole scene and the way I think I read that Steve Martin, that scene and the scene in the car where Del is messing about with the seat mechanics, are two of the reasons why he wanted to make the film. Those two scenes were so funny that he had to do it. And some of the characters, like they meet up with that yokel called Owen.
Yeah, the cousin of the guy.
Man, I laughed so
shower
hard.
curtain rings too.
Like, I know they're over-exaggerated stereotypes, but some of them are so funny. He's like, he keeps going, and stopping. To his wife, he's like, "Get out of the car, woman, carry this man's bags." Yeah, this woman had the baby sideways. She can deal with anything, okay? It really is a...
And they get stuck in the back of the pickup truck.
Yeah,
ride.
Man.
Yeah.
And the places they get stuck in are just absolutely brilliant. Get stuck on the back of that trailer at the end because they can't get into the big truck. Yeah. Because they can't get a ride in the cabin because the guy freaks out when people come in his cabin. Some amazing characters in this film. Yeah,
and the bus, like, oh, you're not gonna be happy with the bus ride, and then cut to the bus ride where there's this kid just running up and down the aisle.
Yeah, absolutely. It's such a really well balanced and funny comedy, and the way it comes full circle, as you said, we already see Del. He just takes this abuse from Neil, and there are moments throughout the film when Neil, cracks and feels like he wants to help him. Like there's a bit where the train breaks down, and Del's dragging his case, and he's looking over his shoulder, and Neil kind of finally goes, all right then. Goes and helps him, but every opportunity he tries to get away from Del. I'll do it in the cafe. He's like, right, I'm going to do it on my own. Yeah. And Del still leaves him half of that money. But that car ride, man, that whole car ride sequence, up to the point where not only have they been pulled up by the cops, but the car is now burning behind them with the wallet in, with all their money and everything else, and they just sat on that case. Wow. And then the fact they wait for it to burn out, carry on driving. And then the cop shows up.
Also, the fact that Del is like the worst motorist that ever lived. Like, it doesn't occur to him to like pull over while he's trying.
Well, he's already broken the chair, and Steve Martin's now on his back like that because he can't sit up trying to sleep. And Del's just—I can't remember what song it is now, but he's just blaring out this song and looking at this sleeping Neil as if he's supposed to be an audience.
Yeah, it's a Ray Charles song.
Ray Charles, like, just really, really funny.
Yeah, but and he just swerves all over the road, like he goes out over into the opposing lane, and
In between those two lorries.
yeah, that's later on. But like while he does the song, like he swerves
Yeah,
over
yeah.
to the other lane and just all over the place. Like, what the fuck are you doing, man? You're supposed to
Yeah,
be driving.
completely. Like, seriously, drive straight in the right lane. And that
Yeah.
guy next to him at one point, just before the trucks, he's going, "You're going the wrong way." What does he know? It's fine. Yeah, it's all. He's drunk. He's drinking. It's fine. We'll be fine. And the trucks. Whoa! Oh man, I implore it. If anyone hasn't seen this film, if they want an absolutely cracking holiday movie with just some amazing characters, I mean, he's a wonderful writer, John Hughes. He always was.
Yeah.
And I think, as you said, because he can now take this kind of autobiographical kind of situation that he went through and found so funny afterwards, and the combination, as you said, of Candy and Steve Martin, they play off each other so amazingly well, and you really feel sorry for Dell at times. And,
I mean,
then obviously that ending.
especially that moment where, I mean, the moment I talked about where Neil hurls abuse at Dell, but kind of gets worse later on when Steve Martin gets booked into a motel room, and Dell is sort of stuck outside, and he's there talking to himself, and he's basically talking to his wife.
Yeah.
And he says, and he reveals that his wife called him the world's most annoying man as well. So that really kind of brings home how much those words really cut, how deep they
like
cut.
he's always talking about always talks about, damn it, man, I'm always pushing people away, I'm always smothering them, like it's happened before, and you start to get this deeper sense of that character. And then of course he sat outside in the pouring snow in this burnt out vehicle, and then Steve Martin finally goes, "What are you doing? You're gonna freeze to death. Come on, come in." It's fine. So there's just moments like that throughout the film that are really quite
probably the
emotional
most
and nice.
revealing moment in terms of Neil was actually on the bus ride where they're singing, and then sort of he tries to jump in and join the community with his song, and he doesn't even know the song that he's trying to contribute with, and no one knows it. They all just sort of look at him and give him
bus
this
goes.
death stare.
And then
And then Dell saves it by going into Meet the Flintstones. Because Dell is the people person. Everybody loves Dell, and not everybody loves
he's wheeling and
Neil.
dealing throughout the film, isn't he? Trying to sell his little shower curtain hooks and stuff, and getting them by and making a bit of money, hustling, throughout the film, which is really, really funny.
I mean, it's pretty evident that Neil is not a people person, even when he gets onto the plane and he gets into an argument with the stewardess at the start of the film as well. But Dell does sort of transform him in that way. I mean, the most resonant scene in the entire film is when Steve Martin is sitting on the train at the end and just thinking, and it cross cuts to the moments they've had throughout the journey. I read that though that actually wasn't acted. That was just
Steve Martin didn't know he was being shot.
Yeah, that was just
he was
basically
on a train, pondering things, I guess.
Well, he was on that train, I think.
Yeah.
But they were
real train.
But they hadn't gone into action.
Yeah.
So he thought it was free time for himself or whatever.
He was probably internally just doing his job, checking his lines. But because his eyes were rolling, it perfectly matched that scene with those poignant moments.
Yeah, it did.
And then that's the setup for the end, basically.
Yeah, where he realizes that all the things that Dell has sort of said about his wife, how devoted he is to his wife, and how he hasn't been home in years.
Yeah.
And so forth. And he sort of gathers that there's something wrong here, and he goes back and he finds that Dell is still sitting at the train station where they said goodbye. And he invites him back home to Thanksgiving with Neil and his family. And that's basically where the film ends. So yeah, it's a nice, feel-good holiday film. I definitely recommend it. It's funny. Like we haven't mentioned, probably the most well-known scene from the film is when Dell and Neil wake up in the motel bed together, and Dell cuddles up to him and kisses his ear, and then they go with Then Neil asks him, "Why did you kiss my ear?" Why are you holding my hand? Del, where's your hand? Oh, it's between two pillows. Those aren't true pillows.
Whoa!
Yeah. How's the Bears game?
Hey, how's that sports? That sports manly sports thing we do? Yeah,
Yeah.
that was brilliant. Yeah, there's so many moments which are just incredibly funny and well written, and the character actors are playing them so well. It's a really good feel-good movie, like you said. It's a great one for Christmas if you haven't seen it, and it'll put you in a very good mood. That's what it does for me. Most John Hughes films do to some extent, but I think this and Uncle Buck are the two ones of his that really do put me in a great mood. So yeah, a wonderful holiday movie, and I implore everyone to go and see it if you haven't already.
I think it's also worth mentioning the soundtrack in the film, because it really stands out at times where they actually use lines of dialogue spoken in the film to sort of remix into the music, sort of this kind of rap thing, where there's a line of dialogue early on where Neil is chasing after the cab that Del steals, and he yells out, "You don't know who you're messing with," and that line gets remixed into rap throughout the film as well, and it's pretty funny. Like basically the credits song. It's just basically remixed lines from the film as a rap. Yeah. Which is pretty funny. And it's something I had never encountered before. Don't recall encountering before anyway.
Bit of trivia I should mention as well before we wrap up. When his wife is in the scene, they're cross-cutting between the two, having a bad night, shall we say, in the first motel. She's actually watching... she's having a baby with Kevin Bacon, and Kevin Bacon is, of course, at the start with the taxi scene. And just the Hughes verse, it's a theory that ties in, and that's the actual character from the other film, which I thought was quite interesting.
Yeah,
it's quite nice that people have come that far with the theories, but it could work, I guess, maybe. Right,
maybe.
Thank you so much for watching, guys. Go and watch Planes, Trains and Automobiles. We've got 3 weeks before Christmas. Go and watch some awesome films, and we'll be back next week, obviously.
And we'll be
looking at Richard Donner's 1988. Scrooged. I watch it every single year. I don't know why. I'm mildly obsessed by it. Bill Murray is just sublime in that film. Karen Allen is brilliant. It's got some amazing comedy moments. And it's just so sarcastically great. I love his character in it. And again, that kind of redemption arc that we find throughout. But brilliant. Right, thank you for joining us on my Last Edit podcast. I have been Citizen Sleeve.
And I've been Silver Hawkins.
And we will see you next Sunday.
Take care.
It easy.
And happy holidays.
Yeah, happy holidays.